Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to 11 Yanks. We have a bonus show here today, and I'm very excited about this one. With me is David Kerr from Cleveland, Ohio, to talk about young MLS homegrowns in 2021. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's funny. I actually thought about this quite a bit, about maybe having you on a show or doing an interview or a podcast with you. And then one of our Patreon supporters, Simon, got in touch and he said, you really should have this guy, David, on the show. He knows so much about young players, and I think it'd be a huge bonus. And I was like, that's it. That seals it for me. So I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah, well, it's been a hobby of mine tracking these kids for the past decade. So
okay, tell us about that. How did you get into tracking all these young kids?
Yeah, so obviously growing up, I played soccer. So I wanted to know growing up in my age group who were kind of the big names, which led me to tracking the players born from 1994 and 1996, looking at these prospects and saying, who's going to carry the men's national team from these age groups and hopefully lead us to the World Cup. 10 years later, those age groups didn't pan out so great, but still got me to check out players like Mark Pelosi, Alfred Caroma, Junior Flores, Kellen Acosta, Rubio Rubin, some of those big names, and kind of after those. Also, and then from there, I just kept studying the player pools for the youth teams, checking out development academy game film, looking at trying to find film on the Europe players online, and just trying to see who's going to evolve our player pool, who's going to graduate us to that next level, and what kind of takes these kids from unknown player to prospect and then to pro / being a kid like Christian Pulisic in Europe.
Right. And that's really what I think we want to. I mean, obviously, we're going to look at a lot of players, and the U.S. is going to continue to develop players. But the ones that we want to look at the most, or that interest us the most, are the ones that are going to help us graduate to that level, where we're not, plucky underdogs anymore, where we're like a global threat on the soccer scene. Where people go, every World Cup, the United States is in the conversation to win it. You know what I mean? That's where we're trying to get to, and that might take 10 years or 20 years or. But tell me something first, David. We have all these guys right now, your Gio Reynas, Pulisic, McKennie, Dest, Adams, all these guys, and it feels, to some people at least, like a golden generation, right? It feels like all these guys are about the same age. They're growing up together. Is this just a golden generation, and are we going to suffer the same fate as a country like Chile, who, now their golden generation is past. They're just not as good as they used to be anymore. Or even Belgium, I think, in a few years is going to be very similar. But is that it for us? Do we have about a 15-year window to win something or not?
No. So when people think golden generation, like you said, this is it for them. This is as good as it gets. When you look at the United States player pool right now, a lot of what you're seeing is when the development academy moved to 10 months, and those players were with their clubs full time, even in high school, gave those clubs a lot more time to develop these kids. Then obviously MLS academies, USL academies, they're getting more times to these players. Real high level coaching is getting better. Even our coaching education to develop more of those coaches is getting better.
Yeah.
This is giving us a much bigger pool. So when you look at our 2016 Olympic team, we had about 3 or 4 guys who were withheld because they were good enough at their clubs to be taken out. Fast forward to 2021, we have about 25 of them who are withheld.
Right.
Even in this pool where we have this many players, we still have 10 to 15 kids eligible for the next Olympics in 2024, born in 2001 and later. These guys are already breaking into what's our golden generation pool.
Yeah.
So and on top of that, right now in the men's national team, our pool has completely been shaken up and changed and strengthened from players born from 1998 to 2000.
Yeah.
You can add a couple 97s in there, just a 4-year gap.
Yeah.
2001s and younger, they're better. Now, are we going to see as many Pulisics, many McKennies, things like that? We'll see, because there isn't really a recipe to that. It depends on the clubs can do a lot, but a lot's up to the individual player. But the amount of potential players who can reach that echelon, who can become those level of players, for every one of those we had before, we have 3 to 4 now. When you look at the 2005s and younger pool, those groups are a lot better than even our 2001s and 2s and things like that. Those players right now, we have enough kids where we could effectively launch in the youth national teams. We could have 3 or 4 teams that realistically could compete with most countries. In our 2006 player pool, we have a lot of players who realistically, I hold these kids in the regard I hold Gio and I held Pulisic at their age. The player pool is getting a lot better from the younger ages. And that's just a testament to the professional clubs are investing. They're taking over the youth development. We're getting more money into it. Our coaches are getting smarter. We're getting into it. These kids see the actual pathway to get to the pro. We're getting these kids pro minutes at 16 and 17 versus 10 years ago when we got these kids pro minutes at 22.
Yeah. It's a good point you hit on, David, because I get asked this question a lot, is what happened, where we were developing decent, hardworking players. You get the occasional outlier like a Michael Bradley, who's very technical for an American. But then all of a sudden we went from developing those guys to developing really technical players. I don't want to say almost overnight, but it seems like an almost overnight shift. Was there a specific event? We all know the DA obviously played a huge, huge part in that. But, the DA started in 2007, right? That was 14 years ago now. So clearly we know the DA played a huge part. But was there any other events or any other specific changes to the DA or to our development system or mindset that you think was responsible for changing the kind of player that we develop?
Yeah, so 2 big events. Obviously, with the DA getting founded in 2007, that was great. When you actually look at a lot of the players developed in that early DA, that actually was the lost generation.
Yeah.
What changed that was when they went to that 10-month season in 2012. They said, we're going to give the clubs more time with these players. Unfortunately, meant a lot of kids left high school soccer, which was a huge downside, huge controversy. But in the long term, for our top tier players, it was a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But with that then sparked the MLS academies who had the money to invest, had the money to bring in these coaches from anywhere they could.
Yeah.
That gun started and those clubs started heavily investing. So who were those early investors? Dallas, Real Salt Lake, Red Bulls, Philly, a lot of those clubs where they're just pumping out prospects year after year. A lot of the kids in the men's national team came from those clubs.
Yeah.
And everyone can recognize them. It's like those clubs, their youth development, it didn't just start the past 2 years. They spent the majority of the last decade investing.
Right.
Other big event that affected it was the residency program for U.S. Soccer, which is when they kept the best players in the U17 national team, focusing on a 2-year cycle based on even-numbered birth years. So it was 96s, 98s, 2000s. They canceled that, and then the best players in our country were at their clubs full-time. This meant that these kids weren't just training with the best 16 to 17-year-olds in the country. These kids at 15, 16, if they're good enough, they're training with men. They're playing full time with the best players in this country.
Right.
That's a huge difference because now with that, now these kids, instead of going to residency, coming back, needing a year or 2 to then get ready for the pros, these kids are ready for the pros by the time they're 17, 16. We're already seeing it now. It's making a huge difference.
That's awesome. So I think, the residency was good for its time, right? It sort of helped to bridge a couple of things, to help to bridge some environments where maybe there was a guy in San Jose who was really good, but maybe didn't have the best development environment. So he went to Bradenton and now is in a better environment. But now we're at a point where enough of our academies are taking development seriously that we don't need something like Bradenton anymore, right? Yeah. Is that sound about right to you?
That's exactly what it is. So if you looked at rosters pre-Bradenton, you would see clubs like PA Classics, where Pulisic was from, Crossfire in Seattle. You would see McLean in Virginia. You would see Bethesda Olney, places like that where it was those local clubs, which is great because those local clubs are vital. But the only issue is because of how our soccer system is set up, those clubs don't have access to that professional soccer. They can't make that jump.
Mm,
Now they can't get that everyday training environment with the pros.
right.
Then a lot of the MLS clubs are like, we can get these kids full time. We can
Yeah.
groom them how we want. The early ones and the smart ones did it right. Now you're having some other clubs who lag behind a little bit. A lot of them are starting to realize we can produce a player for a lot cheaper than what we can buy.
Hmm.
Then we can sell this kid for 2 to 5 million.
Or more.
We can sell him for 10.
Yeah.
We're not going to see the really big notice with that yet when we get to our '05 kids, our 2008 born players. It's going to be a big change from even what we're seeing now.
So you're suggesting that the level could even get better, that the
Yep.
kind of player we're producing, and maybe not the top level, but the mean, right? So the
Yep.
average ability of the American player is only going to continue to go up from here.
Yep. It's going to get better. The amount of kids who you can say this kid has the potential for Europe, number of those players is going to increase. And it's going to increase by a lot because we have a lot better coaching structure. We have better access to professional pathways. And there's a lot better scouting too. So a lot of those kids who might have not had access, clubs are starting to find those kids. Now that's something that could get a lot better. And I want every single club to be able to give these kids free opportunities like the MLS clubs are.
Mhm.
But it's a lot better than your 1 to 2 top talents in the country could go and find a club. Yeah.
So we want to talk about 2021 now and just sort of the level of the homegrown players. I think it's fair to say that we've seen over the last few years an increased number of not only minutes being given to homegrown players in MLS, but also production levels. You know, it wasn't like these guys were getting pity minutes or charity minutes. They were scoring, assisting, being key figures for their teams, especially last year. Now, some people will argue last year was kind of an aberration because of COVID, because of MLS, you know, the tournament. MLS is back. And so, you know, a packed schedule meant that they had to give opportunities to young players. How much of that do you think was, you know, the circumstances, and how much of it was clubs went, oh, these guys actually are really good, let's put them in?
For a couple kids, I think it was that circumstance. But honestly, for a lot of these kids, I just think ability of our younger players are they're able to handle this level. They're technically proficient enough to be able to keep up with them. Our club's expecting a lot of these kids to be game winners. I'm not totally sure about because they're teenagers.
Yeah.
But they're able to competently play at this level. And a lot of them are earning it now.
And being key contributors for some of their teams. I mean, look at Cole Bassett, for example. We never think of the Rapids as a development club, right? It was always Dallas, Philly, maybe Galaxy or New York Red Bulls. But then you saw, you know, Colorado Rapids coming out with Sam Vines and Cole Bassett being heavy contributors last year.
Yeah.
Or even San Jose, notoriously terrible at development. Cade Cowell at least got some minutes. You know what I mean? So even the teams that we look at and we go, they're not great at youth development or giving opportunities. Even they started, you know, playing more homegrowns, with some exceptions. Minnesota and Portland still lagging behind everybody else.
Yes.
Let's jump into 2021 homegrowns. I wanted to start by basically running down. There's 31 new homegrowns that have been signed to MLS teams so far for this season, correct?
There
new
are.
ones, not including the ones that were played last season.
Yep, 31.
So far, and we're recording this on February 22nd, the season doesn't start for almost another 2 months. So that number could be higher. We could see 40 or 50.
Yeah, preseason starts soon. You're going to see a lot of kids get brought in the preseason. I know Dallas is a couple. I know DC is a couple. We're going to see more. When you look at 2 years ago, Danny Leyva came in the preseason. Wasn't even on the homegrown radar. Killed it in preseason. A month later, signed a homegrown deal.
Right. Yeah, so we could see as many as 40, 50 homegrown signed, which is amazing. I mean, that is mind-blowing. And at least half of those guys, I think it's fair to say, will probably get some amount of playing time. At least half.
Yeah.
So why don't you do this? Why don't you run me through the list of these 31 guys? Now, do you have them in order of who you think is the most talented, or do you just have a list?
Right now, I have them by club. And sorry for Canada fans, I didn't include the 3 teams on there because we're just talking about American talent today.
Yeah.
But for this, we went in order of club by alphabetical order.
Yeah, give us a 30-second snippet on each one of those players.
So first up, Jackson Conway, striker Atlanta. Kid killed it in USL season. Multiple certified bangers that he scored, consistently starting for Atlanta United too. Awesome talent. We'll see how he gets minutes. I know it's going to be potentially difficult with Joseph Martinez hopefully coming back.
So center forward, or can he play wide as well?
More of a classic 9.
Okay.
So classic 9, big, strong kid, good frame on his size, good finisher, decently mobile, not the fastest kid, but he's gonna be a pretty good MLS striker long term. Next up from there, Machop Chol. So he's a 1998 winger. Now I'm not totally sure he's actually USA eligible.
Okay.
But he was from Wake Forest. Now, when I actually went to see Atlanta United play in the Development Academy playoffs in 2017, I went to see Chris Goslin and Andrew Carlton. Pretty big names at the time. The player that I actually left and being the most impressed with was Machop Chol. Then he went off to MLS Generation Adidas Factory, which is Wake Forest, and became a really good player. Was a senior this year, potentially going to the draft, and Atlanta said, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to sign this kid. He should be a pretty good off-the-bench depth piece this season. We'll see if he floats between MLS or USL.
Gotcha.
So from there is Efrain Morales. So really good, high-potential center back. So a while ago, Atlanta United's academy director, Tony Anand, talked about that their academy had a pretty talented 04. I think they were actually talking about this kid. Efrain Morales has had European interest in him. He's trained with Manchester United. He came into USL as a 2004, so as a 16-year-old. Fit right in, played well, good with his feet, good passer of the ball. Could be a bit more sturdy of a defender. When you look for ball-playing center backs in the future, this kid fits the bill.
Is he a dual national, or is he just American eligible?
I'm potentially Mexican / a Central American country.
Okay.
But I'm assuming this kid is probably grew up in America, likely going to be for us, and then good luck to anyone who can try to take him. So from there, we move into Columbus. So for this, we have Isaiah Parente from Columbus Crew. This kid, really good, number 8, center mid, really good linking player. Now, he can get the ball. He can distribute all over the pitch. He covers ground pretty well for a center mid. I've always rated this kid for a long time. Like where I am, he's from Cleveland area, out from Medina.
Okay.
He was another player who went to Wake Forest. Again, the club just produces pro players. Him, Machop Chol, Brandon Cervania, Mark McKenzie. They're getting it done.
Does he, when you say central midfielder, are we talking like box to box, holding midfield, attacker, like a 10?
Box to box midfielder.
Okay.
Right on the line of number 8.
Okay.
So that was Columbus's new signing of the season, which now moves us into DC United. So last season, we saw Kevin Paredes, typically inverted right winger, play a lot at left back because he's left-footed and physically developed enough to competently play that.
Yeah.
Well, there was also a left back in DC United's academy in the same age group who's pretty talented himself, and that's Jacob Green.
Green?
Yep. So this is a kid who pretty athletic, pretty good in the ball. Not too sure how high his ceiling is going to be, but that DC United had to play Kevin Paredes out of position at left back. Now they have a natural left back actually on the roster. This is a kid.
How old is Jacob?
He's a 2003. So he's going to be turning 18 this year.
Okay.
So this kid, he has a chance to come in and fight for minutes. It all depends on what the new head coach does.
Yeah.
So, and now moving from DC, we go to FC Cincinnati, the new club in my state of Ohio. We have Beckham Sunderland, the really tall goalkeeper from Cincy. So Beckham has a unique situation. He's actually the son of FC Cincinnati's academy head, Larry Sunderland. It's unique. So people are going to think that that might have had a factor for why this kid signed, but realistically, it's not.
Okay.
He's a good goalkeeper. He comes from a
family. He'll be like what, third on the roster or something?
He'll probably be the third stringer. Is he going to play for a while? Probably not. Goalkeepers.
How old is he? 16?
He's a 2003 player, so he's going to be turning 18 this year.
Okay.
His father was a professional soccer player. I believe his grandfather was as well. This kid's going to be around for quite a bit of time. So how we see Cincy handle him, That's going to be on the first team for them to go. But this kid is trained with clubs in Europe. He should be one that should get some minutes for the 2003 youth national team. So now we move from FC Cincy to FC Dallas, the model United States Academy. So this is a player who was signed midway through last year, and it's Justin Shea, 2003 center back / right back. This is a kid who has made headlines recently because he went to train at Bayern Munich. And Argentine / Bayern Munich legend Martin D. Michaelis loved this kid.
Okay.
Super behind this kid. Told Bayern's board, we're keeping this kid here for longer. FC Dallas didn't start preseason for a while, so they can handle it. This is a kid who he's kind of following the Chris Richards pathway.
Yeah.
Now, is he going to be as good as Chris Richards? That's to be determined. Yeah. But it's a pretty good vote of confidence when you have a international legend, super high quality, former top 10 player in his position, center back, and Martin D. Michaelis vouch for this kid's talent.
Right.
He's also now training with Bayern's U23s, which is a big deal because Chris Richards at this age didn't even get to do that.
Okay. He was in the 19s, right?
He was.
So with Justin Shea, sorry to interrupt you, I did see on your, was it you on Twitter the other day who posted some comments from him about wanting to represent Germany?
Yeah, so Brian Sciaretta, he had an interview with Justin Shea, and Justin Shea did say that if Germany was willing to call him up, he wasn't sure if he would say no. But Greg Berhalter, a.k.a. the Nick Saban of dual national recruiting, I'm not too sure he's going to let that slide. I wouldn't be sure if Shea is going to get called up to the men's national team, but should we probably staple this kid into the 2003 starting lineup at right center back? Absolutely.
So what exactly can Greg Berhalter do apart from obviously keep in touch with the guy? Because U20s, there's no U20 World Cup and there's no U17 World Cup.
Keeping in touch with him, keeping tabs. The second we have a camp, he has to be the first name of the sheet.
Yeah, has to be. Agreed.
Not because he's honestly good enough to start anyways, but if he's on the line for a country like this, and keep in mind, he might be good enough for Germany's 03s. We've been in situations where our players and our youth national teams are getting call-ups from these camps. It's not a rare circumstance now. I mean, even in our 2002s, Maxi Dietz, defensive mid for our team, he didn't even make our U17 World Cup roster, and he was getting call-ups to Germany's 02s.
Wow.
So it's not an unlikely circumstance Justin Shea could get a call-up. With that, enough on just this kid, because I don't want this to be a 3-hour video.
Yes.
On to Houston, the other Texas club. They have 2 new kids. So the very first one is Juan Castilla. I'm really excited about this kid's game. Is he going to play the season? Probably not, because he's a 2004 born player. Juan Castilla can play center mid really well as a classic 8. He can also play 6. Really tidy, really technical player. I can distribute the ball really well. He's going to keep the ball every time. He does need to put on the pounds a little bit before he's ready for MLS level because he looks like he's 17. But this is a kid I'm excited about. Pretty similar to him is their other newer homegrown, that's Danny Rios. Danny is going to be an attacking midfielder / winger. When you look at some of those Central American, South American players with those Latin roots, they're skillful. They have flair. They're slick on the ball. Danny does fit that.
Yeah.
Kid is smooth. Kid can play. He's going to have to put on a little muscle before he's ready for first team minutes. But both of these kids down the road are going to be players that Tab Ramos could bring these kids into his lineups. With a coach like Tab knows youth development better than almost anyone in the country. When these kids are ready, look out. They're going to come firing. So now from Houston, we can move to Inter Miami. So obviously Miami has been a club. This is going to be the second season. In that second season, they've given us 3 homegrowns. Very first one is Ian Frey, center back who played for the second team last year. Did pretty good. This wasn't a player I was as familiar with and expecting to be a homegrown, but I'm going to trust the Inter Miami coaching staff on this. He's of 2002. He's going to turn 19 this year. Inter Miami could have been better defensively last year, but as a new club, they could have been better everywhere. So we'll see how this kid breaks in. The 2 that I'm really excited about for them are the next two signings. The first one is Edwin Azcona. He was born in 2003, typically plays on the left wing. Another kid who just is saucy on the ball, really skilled, takes defenders on, beats them, crosses in, pops in his own shots. But the real gem that Inter Miami has signed to the first team is 2005 born Felipe Valencia. He's going to be turning 16 this year. In USL League One last year, even though he was 15, this kid was making plays. He was beating players. He didn't look like he was 15. He's going to be one of the first names for the 2005 national team for us. Also a dual national.
Mexico or somewhere else?
Maybe Cuban. Not too
okay.
sure. I know he is a dual national. So when you look for who's going to be your type of Ulianes type player for this age group, this is it. So now from Inter Miami on to LA Galaxy. The Galaxy have signed 3 kids from their second team up to the first team for this season. First one has been around in the youth world for quite a long time, and it's Adam Saldana. Adam can play the 6 or the 8, buzzes around the midfield, pretty good distributor, decent at breaking up the plays. He could be a little more physical, isn't the most athletically gifted player, but is very good at keeping the ball. Very high IQ.
Wasn't he at the Under-17 World Cup 2 years ago?
He started every single game. So we kind of found out if you don't put 2 physically dominating center mids next to each other, what happens?
Yep.
If you can put a player who can dominate the field and let a kid like Adam Saldana kind of channel that ball from defense to attack, you're going to end up being pretty successful. He's really good at that.
We should have had Brian Ko partner Saldana.
That's
another story.
I'll argue that till I die. KO's legit. So then from there, we move on to an interesting one because LA Galaxy has decided to not put all of their eggs in one basket. They've signed not one 2003 born center back, but 2 of them, in Jalen Neal and Marcus Fernakis. Both right-footed, pretty similar size profiles, both really good defenders. Jalen Neal is a bit more of a lockdown and a bit better of a prospect, and in my mind is the better of the 2. But Galaxy's going to bet on both of them. So we'll see who ends up winning the minutes between the 2 of them. This is going to be a battle between them to see who wins. And keep in mind, if these 2 don't get first team minutes, the Galaxy have some other kids in their academy who are damn good center back prospects. Pressure's on for these 2. 2 years later, you could be seeing another kid get signed.
Before you move on quickly, Mauricio Cuevas, what are the chances he gets signed this offseason?
0%.
Really?
Not a chance. So Mauricio Cuevas had an agent who does have kids on the LA Galaxy roster and recently moved from that agent to someone else who him and his brother have had ties with LA Galaxy, and those ties were cut, and they aren't exactly the biggest fans of MLS, and every player repped by them is in Europe.
Good to know. So you're talking about the Klybans here. He's represented by Gary.
Yeah, so Gary does have some good European contracts. I'll give him that. And he has made some good moves getting their kids to Europe initially. So we'll see where he places Mauricio Cuevas, but the kid has his eyes on Europe. Mauricio Cuevas, for his age group for the national team, chiseled and stone starter. No one's competing with the kid.
And he's a free kick maestro. I've never seen a kid his age hit free kicks like that in
free
USL.
Kick maestro. He can cross the ball. He just annihilates defenders 1v1 on the ball. He could be better as a defender, locking down 1v1. He turns 18 this year. Players aren't often that good of defenders at his age, so time to develop. Serginho Dest 2 years ago was a pitiful defender. Now this kid started in Barcelona. Moving from the LA area, because LAFC has not actually made a signing, but we're moving to New York. First one is NYCFC with Andres Jason. Andres Jason is a 2002 born player, former youth international for USA, playing on our U17 World Cup team, who tragically got last in their group. But this is a kid who, in the DA, even playing up an age group, he just wasn't challenged. Dominated for NYFC, went to Yale, was also really good. I don't know if he's going to make it to Europe, but he's going to be a player on an MLS roster, getting minutes for a very long time. Will he get minutes this season? I don't know if he's physically ready for it, but this kid's going to be a good professional. He has a good head on his shoulder enough that he got into Yale. And now moving into the real cream of the crop prospects among our new homegrowns. And this is 2006 born, recently turned 15, Bento Estrella. I mean, he's going to be such a star that his last name literally means star. He's a 16-year-old or 15-year-old center mid, just turned 15 this month. He signed for that.
He's already been signed by the Red Bulls.
Now, there is a good reason for this. So, in the world of soccer, if you're trying to move to Europe, you have two routes. And it all depends on, do you have a European passport? Right. If you do, you can move to Europe at 16 years old.
Right.
If you don't, you're stuck in America until you're 18.
Right.
And sometimes it comes around from clubs that even though this kid is really young, it's worth it to sign this kid, because if you don't, they're going to wait a year. You're going to lose out on millions. That's what's happening with Bento. Okay. I'm not a fan of seeing a 14-year-old get signed to a professional deal.
He's 14, huh?
He's 15 now.
Okay.
Signed the day before he turned 15.
Wow.
But when you have a center mid who is just, I've never seen a kid be so unfair against his own age group. He's physically, I mean, the kid's pushing 6 foot, 6'1" at his age. He's coordinated. He's strong. Now, obviously, because of his age, his IQ, his mentality, they could be better. He hasn't really been challenged properly in the DA at his age group, at the U17 level, playing 2 years up. Realistically, even at the U19 level, playing 4 years up, he's still stuck out as a positive player for the Red Bulls.
Yeah.
So this is a huge talent. So when people look to who could be that next Pulisic, that next Gio, we waited 4 years from Pulisic to get Gio. Right. Bento's 4 years younger than Gio is. The unique situation with Gio and Pulisic was they both had Euro passports. The 06 age group, in my opinion, is by far the best we've had.
Oh, really?
There's more center mids than just Bento. The midfield is absurdly deep. There's only 2 of the kids in that age group that can move to Europe at 16. Bento's one of them.
They're all going to be in MLS for a bit.
Do I expect Bento to play in MLS this season? Probably not. Kid is 15.
But he could go play in USL.
Yep, he's going to play in USL. He's going to do well in USL. And this kid is probably going to be a $3 to $4 million sale with a hefty sell-on fee later on to some team in Germany or Portugal. Now it's on this kid to be professional. There's been prospects who've had this talent who have just plain and simple been idiots off the field.
Yeah.
So moving on from New York, we're going to move south all the way into Florida with Orlando City. They recently signed right back last year in Michael Halliday. He's now eligible to play in Orlando. He's a right back born in 2003 when you're looking for who's going to be Mauricio Cuevas' backup. This is the kid. Pretty athletic kid, gets up and down the line really well. Pretty similar player to Joseph Scally. Could be a bit better on the ball, but just a good athlete who drives up and down the field, really athletically gifted for his age, is also a very good defender for his age too. So I don't expect him to play, but this is a kid that's signed with intention of in 2 to 3 years, this kid's going to be getting quite a bit of minutes. So moving on from there into the only other academy that's currently challenging Dallas for the kings of the MLS Homegrowns. So Philly has 5 kids who are now going to be eligible for minutes for the first team who were all signed last year. So starting off, 2001 right back Nathan Harriel. This kid, he's a bit older than the rest that we're going to talk about. Very athletic right back. Did great in USL as both a right back and a left back for a team whose average age was often like 19 years old. He was one of those kids on the field at his age in the USL, which is nuts. But he's very athletic, pretty good on the ball. Be a little bit better of a defender, but obviously he's young. That can develop. Philly have obviously shown a good ability to develop defenders. They've played Austin Trusty in the back line. Matt Real's starting almost every game. I don't really need to explain Mark McKenzie. I have no doubts this kid's going to be either a very good pro for Philly or who knows what the ceiling is going to be. So now on to 4 very big talents. American soccer community loves Brendan Aronson. Well, there's another one, his younger brother Paxton. Paxton's born in 2003. He's not the same player Brendan is. Brendan buzzes around the field, creates stuff, is just a constant presence out there. Very energetic center mid, can also double as the 10, very good at both. That's not so much Paxton's game. Paxton is a very clear-cut 10.
Okay.
He's attacking mid. He's not going to buzz around it much, but the kid is lethal. He can pick out that final ball. On the ball, I think he's more skilled than Brendan is, but Brendan's going to have more of a footprint on the game than Paxton.
Gotcha.
Because
that's a good way to describe it, because I've heard that debate between Paxton and Brendan from a lot of people I trust, and I've heard both sides. But I think the way you put it is probably well articulated.
Depending on the system, one's going to be better than the other. I mean, Brendan's killing it. He's in Europe now. For Salzburg, he's doing great for himself. So can Paxton live up to his older brother? We'll see. It's a high bar he's being set, but I don't know. The kid's good. I like him. Next one, another 2003, but this is a center mid. This is Brendan Aronson's replacement, Jack McGlynn. He's probably 5'11", 6 foot, a pretty good center mid physically, is a very good presence on the field. This was realistically, on most games, the kid that stuck out the most for the Philadelphian Beat. Sorry about that. For the Union 2 team. Could have been a little bit better of a passer, but still really young. Wins balls, keeps possession, really high soccer IQ. In the final third, actually was pretty efficient for a kid his age. So another player I'm really excited about. Out of the 4, he was the most pro-ready.
Okay.
So if you're looking for one of these kids to get minutes quickly, this could be the one. He's going to be competing with a 2001 and Cole Turner for minutes. So we'll see who wins that. So now moving into their 2004s they signed. The very first one, and out of all these kids that we've talked about so far, this is one of my favorites, and Brandon Craig. Really great personality, great motivator. He is a tall and lanky center back, very much so like Jack Elliott for Philly.
Okay.
Brandon, despite being 2004 and 16, was actually the captain of the Philadelphia Union 2 USL team. So he was captaining professional players at 16. That speaks loads about this kid's personality, his demeanor, and his maturity and professionalism. On top of that, when you look for distributing center backs, there's a constant debate in the youth community about, is this kid going to be a 6 or a center back, because he's clean enough, has the high IQ, awesome distributor on the ball. Brandon personally has said that he's looking to be more of a center back long term.
Okay.
So if this kid can bulk up, he's Europe bound. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He also has an English passport, so he's not going to have trouble going to whatever country in Europe he wants.
Right.
He's also trained with Liverpool, and Liverpool apparently spoke some pretty good things about him. Out of the 4 of these kids, Brandon Craig is the most likely to have the best career and the most likely to get to Europe. And the final Philly kid is Quinn Sullivan. So Quinn is from a soccer family in Philadelphia. His father, played professional, is involved with the Philly soccer scene. Mm-hmm. This kid can play attacking mid, can play winger. For me, he was a pretty established starter among his age group for the 2004s. For a while when he was in the DA, I thought this kid was potentially following the Geo track. Had a little bit rougher of a 2019-2020 season, but is still really talented, creative, crafty, drives well with the ball, beats kids, is gifted physically. Will he be a winger? Will he be a 10? That's the question. With Philly's system, it's looking like he's probably going to play as a 10.
So basically him and Paxton fighting it out for the same spot.
That's exactly what it is, but Quinn is a lot more versatile. He can also play as their forward. He can play as their kind of wider midfielders, and their 4-1-2-1-2 basically formation they play. The big thing with Quinn is that Quinn is a good player. He's actually not the biggest talent in his family. He has a younger brother, Kayvon Sullivan, who every single coach, every single scout I've talked about raves about this kid. He's young and born in 2009 and is the best player in Philly's 08 team. Potentially might get moved up to the 07s. Quinn Sullivan trained with Borussia Dortmund earlier last year. Who else did they bring? This kid, Kayvon, and apparently he showed out and really impressed. They also have German passports. So when Kayvon turns 16, we'll see if Philly can keep him. In my opinion, Kayvon is the biggest talent in that academy. There's a kid born in 2008 who's also freaky talented. Massive talents. That club is doing wonders. When you look to high-level talents, in the next 3 to 4 years, Philly's going to be signing 4 or 5 kids who are on the track to go to Europe. and I would be shocked if they aren't. So now we go to Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake signed 3 kids for this season. First one up, in my opinion, by far the best talent of the 3, is 2004 goalkeeper Jeff Duzna.
Okay.
So Jeff is in a very good goalkeeper age group for his age group for the youth national teams. This kid's a great goalie. He's a good shot stopper, good with his feet, good size. So David Ochoa has some pressure on him. If David Ochoa isn't at the top of this game, RSL is going to move this kid out and bring Jeff Duzna up in his place.
Who played as the number 1 for RSL last year? Was it McMath?
I believe it was. Now, David Ochoa was probably going to be the number 1, but he's had some unfortunate injuries. Probably the best or most talented goalie among the 2024 Olympic cycle for our 2001s to 2004s.
100%.
But this kid has to stay at the top of his game now, or else Jeff Duzna could go and take that spot right under him, and they'll sell Ochoa out to the first bidder. So there's 2 other players that, admittedly, these are some that I don't know too much about and were unexpected signings to me. They're Bodie Davis and Andrew Brody. They both played with Real Monarchs, did pretty well. Real Salt Lake said we're going to bring both of them to the first team. So Real Salt Lake they had that great class of 97 with Brooks Lennon, Sebastian Saucedo, Justin Glad, Aaron Herrera, guys like that, and they had a big footprint in the first team. Since then, they really haven't had that much academy effect.
No.
So can these kids break that mold? Can they really go? And to be fair, it's not exactly RSL's fault. They lost Sebastian Saucedo, Taylor Booth, Zach Booth, Bryce Duke. Yeah, they've gotten fleeced by Europe.
Yeah, they have.
So that happens.
Ledesma.
Yeah, Richie Ledesma too. Forgot about him. So that's right there 4 kids who are good enough for your first team who left.
Yeah.
Those kids they probably had in mind were going to be for the first team. So now moving on to Sporting Kansas City, our last team here. They have 4 new players for this season. The very first one is Wilson Harris. So Wilson Harris actually won USL Young Player of the Year. Banged in goals for fun in the USL Championship. Great striker. When you look for, could this potentially be Chris Wondolowski 2.0? Not the most athletically gifted player, but super high IQ, great movement, finds the back of the net. He's born in 1999, so he's a bit older than the rest of the kids in this list.
Okay.
But his play was so good in USL, you had to take the kid. Next up, when you look for their youth players, is Ozzy Cisneros. So Ozzy's 2004. He can play as a striker, he can play as a winger, he can play as a 10. I think he's probably going to be a winger or a 10. I don't think he quite has the physical ability to play as a striker, but he's a really technical player, has been a lock for the youth national teams for his age group in their 2004 camps. Really hard, grinding player, physically just bullies kids because he's really strong. Now, is he going to be bullies center backs at the professional level? Probably not. He's a pretty big talent, but Sporting KC has a couple of 05s and 06s who could really push him. So this kid has to perform at his best because Gage Akalu, born 2005, Ryan Reed, born 2006, they have it. So if Ozzy doesn't bring it every day, tough luck, kid, you're not going to play. There's younger kids who are going to push. Moving from then, so 2 in still U20 eligible, but older players, Brooks Thompson, a goalkeeper, and Grayson Barber, who I'm actually drawing a bit of a blank on. But those were 2 kids from their second team. They signed to the first team, did pretty well in USL. Now, will they get minutes? We'll see. Sporting Kansas City last season did a great job of playing young players. Most notably Gianluca Buzio. But, I mean, you saw Cam Duke get a lot of minutes. Jalen Lindsay got a lot of minutes. Juan Kuzane played a little bit. They had the attacking mid kid, forgetting his Felipe Hernandez got quite a bit of minutes too. Even though they weren't exactly high up on my list, they can fight. Brooks Thompson in particular is a really good goalkeeper. And then finally from these, things to know for, so you have your Generation Adidas classes. Every single year, despite people complaining about the MLS draft, there's always 1 or 2 kids that pop up. In the past, you had Jackson Mules, you had your
Jack Harrison,
Frankie Amaya, Jack Harrison, Daryl DK.
Yeah.
So there's still
Chris Mueller.
Yeah, Chris Mueller spent 4 years. That's Chicago Fire's biggest sell that they have right now. Lockers went to Wisconsin, scored goals for fun there. But right now, we have Daniel Pereira, who is the really big talent to look for in Austin FC. This kid could walk in and get minutes right away. He's a center mid, was amazing at Virginia Tech. Sometimes you have kids slip through the cracks in high school soccer. He moved to America from Venezuela at 15. That's going to partially be it, but he came to Virginia Tech, was awesome this past season. First pick off the board. Then you have another Wake Forest player in Calvin Harris, who was the second pick. Striker, scores goals at will. Just another really talented kid, was a sophomore. Signed. He's to FC Cincy. Now, FC Cincy just signed Brenner, a 2000-born Brazilian talent, who is lighting up the Brazilian league.
Yeah.
I played down in academies of Brazil and trained down there, and I've seen the types of kids that come out of that. This Brenner is going to be unfair in MLS, and it's going to do wonders in Cincy. Finally, the last generation Adidas kid to look out for is Philip Mayaka from Colorado Rapids. This was the kid that many people a year ago expected to be the number one pick. Came out of Clemson, another center midfielder who just dominated games he was in. Physical presence, grinds and tackles, wins the ball a lot, also channels that ball from defense to offense really well. So perfect. So
cool.
Those are the new players in the league to look out for.
Thanks, man. I mean, that's a mouthful. That's a lot, but I think that gives us a good basic idea of what we're dealing with and who to keep an eye out for.
Yep.
Let's move into the next level of players who, now this could be players who were signed this season or who have already, been signed and played. And a lot of these guys are that. I think there's about 14 or 15 guys, I think, that we've talked about as being, potential MLS breakouts. This could be the season where they really show up and show out. Who are these guys? I think a lot of people will be familiar with a lot of them already. First up is Aiden Morris, right?
Yep. So like last time we went club by club yet again. So first one, Aiden Morris, Columbus Crew. I mean, people who saw this kid in the MLS Cup final last year.
Yeah.
Lit it up. Really good defensive mid. Physically dominant. Can distribute the ball.
Yeah.
Numerous high-level coaches I've talked to are in love with this kid's potential. I think he's going to end up going to Europe in his career. The issue this kid has in Columbus are U of R Tour and Darlington Nagby ahead of you.
Yeah.
Those are two pretty immovable objects from the lineup. But this kid still has the talent that you need to get this kid minutes. Just a huge potential. He's by far the best one right now in the Columbus Homegrowns.
Yeah.
So I think the cream's going to rise to the top, and this kid's going to do well. If he doesn't break 1,000 minutes this season and light it up, he's still going to get those sub minutes. The year after that, he's going to really push for it. He's going to aim everything.
He seems very well rounded to me as a holding midfielder. A lot of holding midfielders, you can put him in a category of like a more of a distributor, or a just defensive, tough tackler. But this guy seems to have both of those tools.
Yeah, he does it both. So next one up is another Columbus kid, Abubakar Keita, great left center back, left-footed. He's a work in progress in distributing the ball out of the back. Still a pretty good defender from MLS level. Mm-hmm. So he's partnered up quite a bit of times with Jonathan Mensah, a guy who was a top 3 center back in the league last year. Abubakar, he should be getting quite a bit more minutes this year. He's ready for the level.
Yeah.
He's a good talent. I don't think he's going to go to Europe per se. But I think this kid's going to be someone like an Iko Parra, a Matt Beasler, Walker Zimmerman. They're a consistent top-level center back in MLS. Still a big name people push for.
We also don't have a ton of left-footed center backs,
so
it's good to see.
Yeah, and in a possession system, it's a necessity. It's a very underrated skill set. Moving on from him into 2 players for DC United who I am really high on. Very first is probably my favorite prospect in the 2003 age group, being Moses Nyman. So this is a kid I've spoke highly of for years. So little kid, but still ends up making defensive plays. He's a gritty player. He's awesome on the ball. His IQ is sky high.
Yeah.
He's wonderful technique, wonderful skill. He can pick out passes. He can channel the ball. Despite being little, you're not going to get the ball off of his foot. This is a kid who, when we look for like your Caden Clarks, Brendan Aaronsons, your Paxton Pomacalls, your Moses Nyman's going to be up there with those guys.
Yeah. 100%. Every time I saw him play for DC, and this was playing in a system that was not suited to his skills at all. It was a Ben Olsen DC. Even then, to me, he really stood out just with his intelligence, his movement, and the timing of his movement. A lot of people talk about movement off the ball, but timing of movement is so crucial, especially when you're trying to build an attack. And he just has that so instinctively, you know?
Some kids are just born with the ability to read and just translate how you see space on the field.
Yes.
So Moses can play as a number 10. I kind of like him a little more as a center mid because of the value that he brings in his hard work winning the ball back and his ability to bring that ball from defense to attack.
Yeah.
Be a huge player.
You need to be careful with him at DC. They don't have the greatest record of developing players, and that's concerning to me. Environment and coaching matters when you're 16, 17.
Yep. So we'll see what the new coach does. But if I was the new coach, I would insert this kid in my lineup every game. So the next up is another kid who should be in every single game for DC. That's Kevin Paredes. So with Paul Arriola potentially being on loan at Swansea City, while he's gone, Kevin Paredes is going to fill in with ease. He's been playing left back and left wing for DC last season. He's best as an inverted right winger where he can cut in on his left foot and create danger. Pretty good build athletically, but awesome on the ball. He knows how to take players on. He knows when to take players on, which is a very important thing that a lot of kids really need to work on. I think Kevin Paredes is going to have a great 2020 season in MLS. Notably, he was the first among the young DC kids to really actually get that nod from Ben Olsen to get in games.
I remember.
Wasn't by accident. Moving from there into our FC Dallas kids. Very first one recently killed it with the U.S. men's national team. Two goals, 3 assists. Jesus Ferreira.
Yeah.
Not so best 2020. Couldn't really find the field. Lucci's having some issues finding where to play this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, he has.
Growing up, Jesus only played at striker. Occasionally here, but was just a classic 9. But, Jesus is skinny and he's short, which is not great for being a striker, for being someone you want to hold the ball on.
Yeah.
But second striker, false 9, number 10, or even a winger.
Yeah.
He has the talent to get in there and play those positions.
I have some concerns with him as a winger, just because I think his 1v1 ability, he's not very quick. And so he has to be more of a tucked-in winger who can drift in field and find space just behind the 9. But if he's a traditional winger, I think he struggles. And I think we saw that with Dallas last year.
We did. And we seem to be producing a lot of those tucked-in wingers now. I could kind of see Greg Berhalter pushing Lucci to get this kid minutes, but he's still a great talent. I think he finds a way onto the field, even in a pretty loaded young talent class for FC Dallas. First among that young talent is Ricardo Pepi.
Yeah.
So still arguably a top 3 talent for the striker pool among any age group. Tall, putting muscle on the frame, getting stronger.
Yeah.
Probably the best natural goal scorer among any striker prospect we have. This kid scored 18 goals in 7 games in the development academy for FC Dallas. Just like, you're done, you're going to the pros.
Yeah.
Where he then scored a hat trick in his first ever pro game. And just continued to just pour in goals.
Yeah. And he got 12 goals that season, didn't he, in USL at 16 years old?
Yeah. He was 15 for half that season, too. He's a young guy. He can play with his right foot. He can play with his left. Nose for goal in the box. If you don't put pressure on him, he's putting it in. So next up from there, we have another player who I'm super high on, in Dante Seeley. So Dante is a player who just loads of talent. He plays like Kevin Paredes as an inverted left winger, or right winger. When he's on his game, Kevin Paredes wouldn't even have a chance of seeing the field. Dante is just, you're not going to stop him from beating players. He can see the field. He can hit passes 40 yards at will. He has a really high IQ. His father was a professional soccer player and taught him the game the right way as a young age. The issue with Dante is that you don't know which one you're going to get on that day. Dante's had a little bit of an issue of one day he's going to show up and score 4 goals in the Development Academy playoff game. The next day he's not even going to register a goal or assist and just be invisible.
Yeah.
That has been the story of this kid's career.
Yeah.
USL League One his first year, just couldn't cut it, just wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Then follows that up at the 2019 Nike Friendlies with his national team, where he was by far our best player in a
Yeah. He was.
super talented group consisting of like Jonathan Gomez, Cuevas, Nyman, Paredes. Dante Seeley was by far our biggest danger man.
Yeah.
This kid has the potential. Will he stay mentally fortified enough to break in, stay consistent? And if he can, he's going to go off to Europe where he has trained numerous times. He can go to France because he has Trinidad and Tobago citizenship, which allows him to move freely to France. Sky's the limit if this kid wants it.
Yeah.
He has to build that mentality. He has to be consistent. So moving from FC Dallas into the other team in Texas that hasn't been as productive in their academy, but they're starting to build quite a collection of talent. But this kid is Marcelo Palomino. So in the early days of the youth national team for the 2001s, this was the guy. Awesome player, number 10, skillful attacker, did whatever he wanted, got away with it, came off as being the best kid in his team, whether with the national team, whether playing up age groups. I remember watching one of the first times. I was like, oh, let's check this kid out. And he gets the ball 65 yards out on the side of the field and scores with it.
Yeah.
His keeper was out by 10 yards, and he's like, I'm just going to shoot it from half field and put it in.
Yeah.
And he had the audacity to do that.
Why hasn't he gotten more chances at Houston so far?
I don't know.
I thought the first year under Tab he was going to get more, but then it was also COVID year. So
yeah, I did too. And to be fair, he's competing with Mimo Rodriguez, who's balling. Yeah. And I still think Mimo should get a call up to the national team. But that's just me saying that. But Marcelo is, I mean, the kid's eventually going to get to it. And when he does, he's going to perform. He had a little bit rougher of a time finding a footing in Europe and bounce back to Houston. Unfortunate, happens. But I think this kid's going to tear MLS up. He has the talent. Like Dante Seeley, does he have the grit? Does he have the fortitude? We'll see.
So much is up here. So much. I think a lot of people forget that. We talk about technical players, tactically good players, but mentally tough players is huge. Huge.
When you see a lot of these kids, a lot of prospects fail.
Yeah.
Generally have like a 10% hit rate in these kids. A lot of it is, can you stay professional off the field? A lot of kids get a taste of life and love it. Leave the field because of it. We've seen both Andrew Carlton and Danilo Acosta fade that way. Yeah. You also have a lot of kids who unfortunately get injuries. Yeah. That's a mental that hurts.
Yeah.
Players like Jordan Moore's the best. It's a real test on them, Richie Ledesma. See how they bounce back, but a lot of players don't.
Yeah. So, and two, it's like when the rough times happen. We're seeing this with Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna right now. Okay, you're going to hit rough spells in your career no matter how good you are, right? Those are our elite prospects. And when you hit them, you have to be able to be mentally strong enough to grind through them, to stay confident. Because if you lose your confidence, it's very hard on the field to start producing again, you know? And you have to remind yourself of the talent you have. And that's not easy to do. It takes a tough human being to be a professional player. It really does.
It does. And mentality is one of the biggest reasons we see players fail in Europe.
Yeah.
I listen to the Benny Sal podcast. Listen to guys like Sal Azizo, Benny Feilhaber, talk about why they didn't make it in Germany. The mentality you need. Go look at Landon Donovan, why he didn't make it at Leverkusen, despite doing the biggest youth national team performance an Americans ever had, winning the Golden Ball at the World Cup. Yeah. Which not even Pulisic and Gio did.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. It takes a very dedicated, very professional, very player to stay, work your ass off, and get those minutes. It's not as easy as people make it seem. You have to be rock solid up there.
Even if you are uber talented.
Yep. Even with those talents, a lot of them won't make it because they don't have that mental capacity.
100%. I said this about Josh Sargent the other day, that a lot of his deficiencies right now in his game, I think, are more mental. You know, we know he has talent, we know he has ability, but he's struggling mentally right now, and you can see it on the field. And not everybody enjoyed that take, but it's, in my opinion, it's true. You know, he needs to find his fortitude again, his swag.
Yeah. And it's hard seeing that. I mean, you have to feel for a kid who plays on a team whose midfield gives him 1/2 chance every 3 games.
Yeah.
despite him making 50 good runs every game and
Yeah.
pretty much being the guy who creates their attack.
Yeah.
He's
their outlet, you know?
Yeah, he is. His hold-up play is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Rusty in front of goal, and I think, honestly, he needs to go to the training field and work on it because he can't be missing chances he does, but
I don't think he's missing chances because he can't finish them. Like, we know he can finish. I think it's up here. I think he's like, this is the one chance we're going to get. I better finish it, and then he fluffs it, you know?
Yep. I still think there's a little bit of repetition that does need to happen, but there is kind of a shock factor of, oh my gosh, this is my one chance. They actually fed me the ball.
Yeah.
A lot of times Bremen scores goals because Josh Sargent plays a pass, makes a run, opens up the field. Player either plays the ball into that space he created or shanks the ball into the space he created, finds another Werder Bremen player who puts it in.
Yeah.
That's how.
Or they'll try to get it to Josh, but instead they pass it straight to the defender while Josh is making the run in behind.
Then the defender shanks it or something. And
it's brutal. It's brutal.
They need more midfielders or he needs a new club. So moving on into LA Galaxy. So we saw this kid make a debut at the MLS's back tournament where he was their best attacker, and then for some reason he just didn't get much playing time after. And that is Cam Dunbar.
Yeah.
Very good winger in his age group for 2002. Top 3 talent in that pool. I don't know why this kid didn't get more minutes. I've always rated this kid. Awesome talent. Creative, fast, not the most gifted physically, not very tall, not very strong.
No.
Beats players, good with both feet, creates chances. Underrated talent. Also notably and vouched for by his former coaches and academy coaches that the kid is a hard worker.
Yeah.
He just works his ass off. And he's gotten far because of it. He wasn't a very highly rated kid at the start. Worked his ass off, worked on his deficiencies, and got to the pro level. I think when LA Galaxy needed a winger so bad, they played Julian Araujo at right wing. They played Efra, who I think is a 10 at right wing. Like, this is the kid. Play him.
Yes, 100%.
And that tails to the other kid who they can play at winger, and that is Jonathan Perez. So Jonathan Perez isn't as physically adept speed-wise as Cam Dunbar, but Jonathan Perez is another inverted left-footed winger. He might be better as an attacking mid. This kid is a wonder on the ball.
Yeah.
Creative, amazing shooter, can put it in from 35 yards. I've seen some stupid good goals from him. I've seen some crazy assists.
Yeah.
This kid's very first professional game, he walks onto the field in the USL, gets an assist within 45 seconds because he got the ball, drove the field, paid the ball, they got the assists.
Yeah.
Massive talent, one of our best 2003s. Realistically is probably a top 5 talent from Mexico's entire 2003 pool, which is also
he's not a U.S. guy at all. What are the chances he represents us?
I'm not sure because for Mexico, he's a guaranteed starter. Has to.
For what though? For U23s?
For their next U20 cycle.
Okay, so a few years down the line.
Yeah. And same with, for USA, same issue, same age group, same cycle. But realistically, like if he plays for Mexico, whether as a 10 or as a winger, he's starting. Gonna be one of their best players. For us, with winger, okay, you're competing with Paredes, Seeley, Cade Cowell. Attacking mid, you're not taking Caden Clark off the field. So he does run into a little issue there.
Yeah.
So can we get him long term? I think so. He's born, raised in America, has those personal connections. All of his friends play in America. He's part of that Ryan Cliven group of Uli, Mendez, Kobe, Cuevas, all of those guys who represent USA. Your personal connections make a huge difference. That's why Des chose USA.
Yeah. 100%.
So I think we can get him, but he's better off right now if he wants to get international minutes playing for Mexico. Because it's not a guarantee for USA, but it is for Mexico. Our 03s are filthy, especially fours. Like if our best 03s played Mexico's 03s, we're winning 4-0. Our 03s also notably have not lost a single game as an age group. despite playing against your best clubs in Europe, multiple tournaments, your Netherlands, your Italy's, your Brazils, teams like those, they hang with them. They beat them.
So those 03s are going to be crucial in the 2026 World Cup. If you think about, they're going to be in their early 20s in 2026, and that's going to be something to behold.
That's a big age group. Them, the 05s, the 06s, I can't wait to see what they do.
It's going to be awesome.
Moving on from there, now we're going to look into NYCFC. There's two kids who I think have the talent to get minutes and are good players. First one is Justin Hawk. So a long time ago, same time I went to go check out Andrew Carlton, Chris Gosselin at the DA playoffs, I went to also see Gio Reyna and Joe Scally. Gio Reyna didn't have his best game. Joe Scally didn't. They played FC Dallas 17s and got killed because Dallas is Dallas and they roll over everyone. Kid who stuck out by far as the best player for NYC was Justin Hawk. Defensive mid, number 6. Jackson Newell, Michael Bradley type kid, John Cardoso type kid, distributor, pass all over the field. Also goes in the challenges very hard. A little bit of a yellow card machine because he sometimes hasn't learned when to do it, but just composed. He immediately walked into the Connecticut USL team, drawing a blank, but walked into USL, starter, controlled the game, just big number 6 talent. His issue right now is, can he play over James Sands? Doubtful because James Sands is legit.
Yeah.
But they're going to move on from James Sands eventually and probably sell him off. Justin Hawk will come in. But the pressure's on Justin Hawk because in NYC's academy is a 2006 named Marca. All right. That takes us to 2002, right back, Tavon Gray at NYCFC. So Tavon can play right back. He's played center back and started at the U17 World Cup there. He's also started for our U17s at number 6, where at the Nike friendlies, I was just blown away by this kid. Really killed it.
Yeah.
Tavon is sometimes of what if our best athletes played soccer.
Yes.
So not the tallest kid, but just athletic as hell. His soccer skills could be a little bit better, but he has the skills and the ability to go and develop that, has potential, and just if NYC do right by him and get this kid minutes, he could be one that goes off to Europe. I think he has that ceiling.
Yeah.
So he's going to be a player who could be a low floor, but he's also going to be a high ceiling. No in between. But Tavon Gray also has an English passport.
Really?
Yes, he does. His dad played in England. Tavon was born there. Same with his twin brother, Kayvon, who also played at NYC's academy. So Tavon is going to be this kid I think could be really good. There's not many kids who are going to fight with him for minutes in their academy. He does have an issue that NYC has a top right back in the league ahead of him. So he's going to have to really fight for minutes. But if you need a backup center back, backup right back, backup 6, plug and play. This is it.
Yeah.
I think he could have a Tyler Adams-esque trajectory where you can play this kid at a right wing back or a number 6, and this kid's going to do just fine at the majority of levels he's in. Sometimes it pays to just be that level of an athlete, but also have the ability to read the field at a really high level.
Yeah.
Just a great talent. So now we're going to go to the mountains to my man, David Ochoa, guy with a great first name. But David Ochoa, like we've said, Real Salt Lake, probably was going to be the starter last year if he's healthy. Should be it this year. Kid had a rough 2020 from injuries pretty constantly. Also had to pull out of the USMNT January camp obviously in January, because of injuries as well.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, let's hope he bounces back.
Yeah.
But if he does, this kid's probably our most talented goalkeeper prospect we have.
Yeah.
He was the best player on our U20s while playing up a cycle and just was obviously our best goalkeeper.
It basically took Brady Scott out of the lineup at the World Cup, didn't he?
He did. So Brady Scott and him pretty much alternated starts.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was noticeable how much bigger saves Ochoa could make, how much more comfortable both Richards and Keita were letting chances happen fall for David Ochoa to save it.
Yeah.
And
big goal against Ecuador in the quarterfinal. That honestly, Brady Scott's angle coming off his line was not great. And I remember thinking to myself, Ochoa comes off his line at the right approach.
I mean, I don't know, man, that goal was a beauty. But yeah, for those who won't know, Ecuador had a ball. Center midfielder drove at Alex Mendez and it was Alex Mendez and Chris Durkin who blew it and just let him go by them, didn't put pressure on him. This kid from like 30 yards out just put a banger in the back of the net and ended our U20 World Cup run where we beat France and made my year. So moving on from that, on to a kid who could have a pretty good U20 World Cup in a couple of years, Cade Cowell. Name that many people had on their lips because he played well when he was on the field for San Jose. He had around 450 minutes last season. Did well in those minutes. So Cade Cowell is another example of when our best athletes play soccer. I'm 25 years old, and Cade Cowell looks older than I do. It is built like a freaking brick house. Just physically gifted, fast, strong, just massive frame. Not the tallest, but kind of a miniature Jordan Morris, what Jordan Morris was at his age. But Cade Cowell honestly has a lot more potential, in my opinion. Came in the MLS. His touches are clean. His movement's good. He's interplaying well. He looked up to the occasion playing against men at 16 years old.
Yeah.
Big deal. Cade's also really young for his age group, which is notable because generally a lot of those late bloomers and those late birth year kids don't make it.
Now, here's my question with Cade Cowell. He's very physically gifted, and that tends to hide some of his technical deficiencies in tight spaces. I think of Cade Cowell similar to how I think of Jordan Morris, where when you're in transition, their athleticism and their speed is going to be effective. But when you're trying to break down a packed defense, in tight spaces, the technique, I have some concerns about his technique in tight spaces, but he is just 16.
I do as well. So with Cade, the difference between Cade and Jordan Morris. Jordan Morris at Cade's age, at this point, was in his final development academy season.
Yeah, that's true.
Was just playing in the DA. And keep in mind, this kid, Jordan Morris, is good in the DA. He was even like top for soccer articles. You can go back. Basically, Seattle's success was from Jordan Morris at that time. That was really hard invest Seattle Academy. Then Jordan Morris went and spent 4 years at Stanford. That's a 4-year gap that Cade Cowell is going to be playing against pros.
Yeah, that's true.
Jordan Morris.
And that's the difference. You know, if Morris hadn't spent 3 years at Stanford, do we see a different player?
Yep. And keep in mind, Jordan Morris also won 2 titles in those years at Stanford. And looked like the player who should be on the men's national team. Like Cade Cowell's going to be training with men at that time.
Yeah.
Cade Cowell probably will get sold to Europe by the time Jordan Morris won his first championship.
Yeah.
So makes a big difference. It pays to be really physically gifted at a young age and have a high ceiling where you can work on those technical deficiencies and improve those in a high intensity training environment.
Yeah, exactly.
If he goes to Europe, they're not going to tolerate him not being as good in the ball. They're going to bring him in early to practice and force him to be either into his head. So now we move on to our final kid of my potential MLS breakout list, and that is 2003 defensive mid Danny Leyva. So a lot of people remember when Danny, as a young 16-year-old, actually might have been 15 at the time, got MLS minutes. Now, to be fair, the minutes he got were when Seattle was just absolutely reamed by international appearances.
Yeah.
They had no depth. I went and saw Danny play against Columbus Crew, and he went the full 90. Had an awesome game. Just controlled possession. You could tell this kid's brain, he just knew soccer. His dad is really high up in the coaching echelon in the Las Vegas area. So this kid from a young age has had a guy who knows the game,
Yeah.
loves the game, breathes it, teaching this kid how to play. Danny Leyva is a book of soccer. Just knows its in and outs, knows what to do in the ball, knows where to move. But there is a red flag in Danny's game.
Yeah.
And that is he makes Andrea Pirlo look like an athlete. Just he is very slow.
Very slow and not very physical.
Yeah. I mean, he can get in on those challenges, but the kid is lanky right now.
Yeah.
Grew really quick. Didn't put a lot of muscle on the frame at the time.
No.
Noticeable. Now, he does go into challenges very hard for his size. When he does put muscle on, might draw quite a bit of yellow cards because of it. But he's just... What worries me is that in Europe, you generally, more often than not, on most teams, need a baseline athleticism.
Yeah.
There's going to be your just rare instances on clubs, but generally, unless you're a Pirlo, a Xavi, and Iniesta, teams like that, if you're a complete zero in one aspect of the game athletically, you generally don't make it to the pro level.
No. And you have to be elite, like a top 5 player in the world for them to overlook your athletic deficiencies as far as the technique goes.
Yeah. As much as some people disagree, that generally more often than not how it is.
And it's going more that way. You know, Europe has been very technically focused for about 10, 12 years, the whole Barcelona, Spain era. And now what we're seeing is the remaining equally, technical. And now they're adding athleticism. Look at France. France is the perfect marriage of athleticism, technique, and intelligence. And they're putting that together. And that's where all of the elite levels in Europe are going to go in the next few years. And that's why I worry about guys like Alex Mendez or Richie Ledesma a little bit.
Ledesma I'm not worried about because the kid's quick. And also that right foot is just nuts. But Alex Mendez, I do worry. But with Danny, he does have a Spanish passport. And that puts an advantage to him because the country that does focus the most on those technical players and the tiki-taka style, which Danny fits very well, is Spain.
Yeah.
If he can land at the right club in Europe when he probably eventually goes over there, he can be very successful. But if he goes to a club where a coach is going to say, I value people who can cover ground and spray the ball, might not be so successful. That's going to be the worry this kid has. But there's not many kids just, even in the entire 2000 age group in the world, who have the ability on the ball and the IQ this kid has. But if he has to improve athletically. One of the worries is that he had a bad 2020 because he broke his leg. It was either his leg or his ankle, but he was out with a broken bone. That's going to have an impact athletically. So if he can improve that, this kid's going to do wonders. But if you can improve it, he'll be great in MLS.
Yeah, and he'll still have a great MLS career.